This is your go-to podcast for the breaking news across the NFL, while breaking down how this might affect your fantasy team's success. Are you ready to be a champ? Then welcome to Fields of Fantasy.
How's it going, everybody? It's your boy, Jonny B, and welcome back to DFS with Fields of Fantasy into week 12. We're running out of those regular season DFS weeks. We're pretty much 2/3 of the way through now, so you need to keep getting involved to keep giving you those chances to win some nice money in your DFS leagues. Of course, our DFS platform of choice is fanteam, in the £2, the £12, and the £75 contests. So a good selection of price points for everybody to get involved, depending on how much of a risk they like to take. And of course, it is a risk. 18 plus, begambleaware.org. When the fun stops, you should stop. Dowie, how are you? Are you excited for another week of NFL and DFS action?
Yes, I think last week was much better than the week before. I actually made profit as well last week, so it's quite a good week. My tight end was Laporta, and he got injured, so I swapped him for Hawkinson. I think if Laporta had played, he would have done much better and probably would have made me some really good money. But it's still a profitable week. In the £2 competition, A Kings won with 217. He won £369. In the £12 competition, First and Goal won with 211 points. He got £1,082. And in the 75, Toy Dara X got 184 points and won £837. He's actually names popped up quite a few times. He's had a very successful year.
Yeah, it'd be nice to hear what his picks are every week. Give us a little bit more of a help to see what the winning team might look like before we start playing. Maybe
we should get him on the show instead.
Maybe. And it might be someone speaking who actually wins some money. It's quite a high scoring week last week, wasn't it, compared to some of the previous weeks? Yeah. 217 is a lot higher than some of the weeks we've had. We've had weeks into the 170s, and I think I got quite high on in 150s in week 10. So
I feel like 180 is normally the winning total, isn't it?
It's close to it, yeah. So 215 was definitely a higher scoring game. So obviously must have been some decent scoring matchups.
With Taysom Hill, he would have probably got you 50 points himself, wouldn't he?
About that, he was number one overall all positions, wasn't he? So
and well done this week as well. The studs hit as well, didn't they?
Yeah, pretty much all of them hit, which definitely helped everyone score higher points. So yeah, let's move on to quarterbacks then. We go position by position. Dowie, who are you going to pick this week at quarterback?
I am going to go, and I think this will be the first time I've gone with him this year. And I remember you mentioned him a few weeks ago, and I thought his price was a bit high, but he's doing the business, and it's a perfect matchup. So I'm going with Bo Nix, 18.6 million. Now, he actually ranks 7th in passing yards per game this season. He's 5th in fantasy points per game, and he's playing the 7th worst defense in the Raiders. I think this is actually a ceiling game for Bo Nix because he's playing one of the weaker oppositions. And you know, with these rival games, they tend to be a bit more high scoring, don't they?
Yeah.
So I just think Bo Nix, I've watched enough of him now to feel confident in him. I think Sean Payton's done a great job with him, and I'm now happy to pull the trigger on him. And I think this would probably be one of his more high ceiling games. So that Raiders defense is poor.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think when I first looked at the slate, spoiler for everybody who listens to the podcast. If you don't know, Dowie always picks first, and then I make a number of picks based on who Dowie's picked and pick some other choices that I like this week. And I can tell you that Bo Nix is 100% the number one name on my list. I think he's going to be very popular because I think his price points means despite the extremely favourable matchup, uh, he's kind of priced better than for the other quarterbacks. And for me, in terms of fantasy, we haven't got the consistent, Lamar Jacksons and
Josh Allen.
Allen's, that type of ceiling players this week where they can really go off on a consistent basis. Although Allen really hasn't as much this season. So for me, it looks a little bit more muddy in the quarterback range. I mean, Jordan Love's quite cheap this week as well.
But he's playing San Francisco.
But he is playing San Francisco, yeah.
It's not a match
So
target. Brock Purdy against Green Bay.
and Mahomes against the Panthers, I think he might have some, some good play early on. But Mahomes and the Chiefs haven't been in hugely high scoring games. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get a nice little bit of a lead by half time in that game and you don't see much more of Mahomes because they've got Hunt, they've got Pacheco, and they might just run it out the game eventually. Or they might do what they've done all season and go behind and try and chase a lead down, and then all of a sudden Mahomes does become a little bit more attractive. But as I said, Nick's for me is the guy I like. If I was going elsewhere, I mean, not Jordan Love, Jared Goff against the Colts, I think is, again, a bit of a no-brainer for me. I think
price as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good price. He's in my opinion, the most informed offense in American football, in the NFL. And I don't see that not continuing in a divisional matchup. It's not a divisional matchup. I don't see that not continuing this week against the Colts, who I don't think are a good team at all against quarterbacks. And they have let up a lot of yards to quarterbacks and points, averaging 19.5. And I think against a better quarterback of Jared Goff, compared to the ones that they play in their divisional games in particular, which I think brings their average against quarterbacks down, because I think their division hasn't been that great. While Goff should outperform that 19.5. And last week he got his towards that 35. And I think he should do that. I think we all know that it's a risk with Goff because sometimes Goff can turn up and do what he did in week 10 and throw 5 interceptions? So, yeah. So, you got that risk for Goff because he does now and then have those type of games in him where, from a fantasy point of view, he's throwing those interceptions. It's going to reduce score, and it is a risk. But against the Colts, I can't see not going with him in some of my lineups. And I'm going to do a little bit of a curveball because of the price, 13.8 million. He's playing the Bucks, who are statistically the worst team against quarterbacks, 26.4. Now, what would you say a Tommy DeVito ceiling game would be?
Well, I'll be honest with you, he's not someone I'm even looking at.
See, I think a lot of people will be put off by him because it's the Giants and it's him.
Yeah.
But he is 13.8 million. It's a differential. I'm not saying I'm going to have Tommy DeVito across all my lineups, but I think I might have one lineup within it as a bit of a differential. And if any team you want him to match up against, it's probably the Bucks or the Jags. So if it wasn't a good matchup for him, I wouldn't touch him at all. But I do fancy having just one lineup because if he does do well, it means you then have the opportunity to, get some studs in some of the other positions. And as quarterback isn't as elite as it has been in other weeks, maybe it's a way to save money in the quarterback position and then put money in elsewhere.
I'd rather Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito. Fair enough. Yeah.
Let's go to running backs. So I'm going to take a little gamble this week. And it could be one of them where he gets 0 points, or he could go off. Pacheco, 11.5 million. Now, Hunt hasn't been bad, has he?
Been good.
But Pacheco, before his injury, was having a career year. If you look at the statistics between the two, Pacheco's outweighs Hunt all the time. The Panthers are the worst team against the run. So I think even if Pacheco's volume isn't elite, he should be really efficient. Probably going to be 50-50 backfield. But 11.5 million, I think Pacheco can outpay that, and he could be the one who saves you money in your lineup to get the studs and score okay. I think he can be a good value pick.
I think he's good value at 11.5. If he plays, there's a good chance he has an opportunity to get to 15 points, especially if the Panthers and the KC game is a KC get a nice lead very quickly, and then they decide to run the game out, and then they're more likely to use Pacheco even more if that's the way they're going to go. And then there's a bit more of a ceiling there, opportunity for Pacheco if that happens. So for me, Pacheco is definitely somebody I'm going to have in some of my lineups. Elsewhere, slightly more expensive than him, probably against the second worst team against running backs. Austin Eckler, he last week had 17 points. Week before he's had 18. Week before that he's had 17. I think that's what we're going to start expecting to see. That type of usage, that type of points that he can score. And I still think at 12.8 million, if he can score you 18 to 20 points, it is a good return on the money you've spent. If you can get some other studs that end up giving you the 30 pluses. And those will average out at 25 points between them. So that's really what you want to aim at as an average per pick. Away from that, who else do I like? It's hard to say. I found it hard in the running backs to pick any of the studs this week.
I quite like Joe Mixon.
I mean, Joe Mixon, I think it's just what you expect from him now all season long, isn't it? He's just going to carry. It feels like he's carrying the Houston offense to a slight extent in terms of fantasy. With Diggs out as well. Stroud's not been as elite as we expected him to be this season, following on from last season. So I think he is the force within that Texans offense this week. So this year. So I think you have to. I'm going to have him in some of my lineups, but I don't want too much exposure on him. But I do like one matchup in particular at the running back position. It is the Patriots-Dolphins matchup. I don't think I like either of these teams particularly in the passing game. I know we keep thinking, do we want a Tua Hill stack? Get them cheap while get that stack while they're cheap. But it's still not happening. And I think the real area here that we can target is the running backs in this game. Both of them, as I say, have particularly poor offenses in terms of passing, but in running backs, I think they have the opportunity because Achane is, in my opinion, probably the stud with the best matchup in this league in this week. And then you've also got Ramondre Stevenson, who's 14 million against the Dolphins. They've both conceded 10 touchdowns to the run game so far this season, 2 running backs. So it's one of an average of 1 a game, which is quite good going. And Miami do concede a few in the passing game as well. So there is opportunity for Stevenson there. And I think at 14.6, I'm going to have him in, again, some of my lineups, but not a lot of my lineups. But I think in terms of matchups, the running backs haven't got that good matchups apart from the obvious 2 that we mentioned, with Panthers and the Cowboys. But past that, there isn't too many that I like. So that's pretty much where I'm at with running backs, because I'm just not confident in any of the others. Like Walker, am I that confident in him? No. Hubbard, no. Jacobs, no. Gibbs I like, but then do I want to spend 19.4 million on him?
You're getting tight in your old age, Jonny B.
I think I am, mate. I think I am.
Let's move to some more receivers because I'm actually spending
Oh, how much are you spending?
17.5 million on Cortland Sutton. I think this has been his best year in a lot of years. I think he was close to your fraud list. Was he?
No,
I
it's
think.
called someone when a fraud.
um, but yeah, remember when we had, was it Freeman on who said he could break the top 5 wide receivers like 4 years ago and we laughed at him?
Yeah,
He could do it this year.
now, there's a chance, isn't there, if they carry on
I think what
going
you
the way they're
see,
going.
I think what you see with Sutton, he gets the most targets, most receptions, and he's playing a Raiders defense who leak points to wide receivers. He's a
Yeah,
big-bodied wide receiver, and our corners will struggle against that. I think because I'm so high on Bo Nix, I've got to be high on a receiver. And if
yeah.
you're going to go Bo Nix, you've got to go Cortland Sutton. So that is my stack of the week.
To be honest, it's my stack of the week as well. But you picked it first, so I couldn't pick it. I'm all over that Broncos that Broncos stack. The one thing I will say is we're both seeing it. Is that what everyone else is thinking as well? And is it going to be so high owned that you need to be differentiated going away from that in some of your lineups because you don't want to be overexposed if if everyone's doing that because how are you going to
Be
catch up
interesting
with
to see
everybody
if
else?
people have started getting the confidence in that stack now. Because
Yeah,
all season you probably could have had it and done well, but I wasn't sold on Bo Nix. I've never been sold on Sutton. But the proof is in the pudding now. We're week 12, aren't we? You know, they've been consistently good. I don't think you can hide from it.
no, no, I think that is my number one pick as well at wide receiver. However, I do like some others, so let's mention them as well. Obviously, I mentioned Goff. I think if you're mentioning Goff, you have to mention Amon-Ra St. Brown because the likely target for Goff is Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they are playing the Colts, who I do think are going to struggle against them. I really do. I think it's hard to look past in having some type of Detroit asset against the Colts. If I'm looking elsewhere, 15.3 million. I quite like it on Ridley. He is ill, however, he is meant to be back to training on Thursday. So whenever you listen to this, he might already be back at training. And then he should be playing at the weekend, and he should be hopefully getting back towards those potential 20 to 25 point scores, which you saw in week 10 and 8. And I think it's more than a possibility that he could do that against Houston, who are the 5th worst team against wide receivers. And the reason I like him at the Titans is who's the other option? Who is the other option? And I struggle to see who it would be. So I think Ridley should get the majority of the workload in that wide receiver room.
Yeah, I'd agree. You know, one player I really like at his price,
Yeah,
Marvin Harrison Jr., 11.6. Quite a cheap price. I know he's very boom or bust, but the bookies have Cardinals Seahawks second highest scoring game, be at 47.5 points. You got Detroit Colts who are the highest scoring game at 50.5. So I don't hate having some assets from Cardinals or Seahawks.
I
So I
think
think Harrison 11.5. If you have him, say you go 4 wide receivers, if he's your cheapest wide receiver, then that could be quite a strong one.
yeah, and he doesn't have to go massive. He gets a few passes, 50 to 100 yards and a touchdown. He pays his price. That's all you need. So if he goes off, even better. And as you say, if he's your cheap one, you can afford to have some of those other studs. What about Mike Evans at 12.7?
I think he's someone I'm going to throw in most of my lineups because of the price. It's
Yeah,
just going to be day to day, isn't it? Is a maybe at the minute.
yeah. Well, hopefully he starts, but they were hoping that he'd be back, didn't he? And he has practiced today or Thursday. So hopefully that's a good sign that he could start for Sunday. And I think at that price, it's hard to ignore him. especially against the Giants.
Yeah, I think like if you look, say you threw Evans and Harrison Jr. in your lineup, that's two wide receivers with high ceilings at really good
Mhm.
value. So you can definitely stack your team, can't you?
That's it. And then if you are doing the old DeVito at quarterback, you can always do a little bit of a stack with him if you really want to take a little bit of a risk on the Slaytons or the Robinsons who are in that 11 to 11.5 million type of range.
Yeah.
Um, if you've got your risky Billy Big Bollock shorts on this week, you could do that. Tight end then, who you picking?
I'm going Hunter Henry, 10.8 million. Since week 7, he's averaged 12 fantasy points and 54 receiving yards. Since Mays took over, he's seeing much more volume, isn't he? And I just think it's a real good value this week. There's not many tight ends I like at the prices. 10.8 million isn't massive because we know the tight end pricing is going to be bonkers, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And I just think it's probably a safe bet at tight end. And is he ceiling high? No, but can he pay his price off? Most likely.
Mm.
I got stung last week with Hawkinson, so I did really want to go cheap, but there's not, when you look at it and there's not many tight ends you like on the slate. I think he's the one I kept going
Yeah.
back to when I was doing my notes. And Miami's defense isn't great. They allowed 20 odd points to the Raiders.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised uh, if he does well.
And
If
I
anybody's
like
going
Drake May. What's your thoughts on Drake May?
to, I don't think in terms of fantasy, he's going to be hugely relevant. But I think it's just a consistent, reliable quarterback who could be the guy that just gets you down the field and gets the job done.
I
I
see a
think
lot
I
of
can,
Josh
I can,
Allen in him,
I can see. Dear,
Yeah. Just, that big-bodied quarterback who's powerful, got a decent arm. I'm not going to say he's going to be as good as Josh Allen, but I see traits in him of Josh Allen.
you'll have one good game and you'll be telling all of us that he's better than Josh Allen. So, uh, but I don't mind it. But I know we're digressing from tight ends, but I'm going to do it. You know what? I look at the quarterbacks of May, Daniels, and Bo Nix, and what I've seen over 12 weeks. And I think everyone was like, oh my God, how good is Daniels over the first few weeks. But I'm really starting to grow onto Bo Nix now. And I'm starting thinking, who do I really want as my quarterback long term?
I actually think
I'm starting to edge towards Nix over Daniels, to be completely honest.
you got to say this has been a strong draft class.
I think it's stronger than we thought.
Yeah, because Jaden Daniels looks a bona fide NFL starter. Bo Nix does. I think we see the potential in Drake May.
Yeah.
And we ain't even talked about the first pick off the board, Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Do you think we're starting to see the Peyton effect at the Broncos and that's influencing some of it?
100%. I think you're going to see like a Drew Brees type career out of Bo Nix now.
It's potential, isn't it? It's
I don't
potential.
think Bo Nix will be, like an elite quarterback, in the Mahomes, Brady type thing, but
Yeah.
I think he'll be very good. Yes.
And could he win a Super Bowl at the Broncos? Potentially. Hopefully not. Those donkeys. Right. My tight end picks. You know what? I don't mind putting up a bit of money this week. Kelsey playing the Panthers. Who's the worst team against tight ends? The Panthers. And also, Kelsey has been extremely expensive of late, because it's based basically on. I'm wondering whether it's based on like the last 5 games, the form on fanteam. It's one thing I need to ask about because it's gone down considerably this week after the 2.8 points against Buffalo. He seemed to get lost in Buffalo. So unlucky Chiefs fans. And while I'm at it, I think that has reduced his price down to 15.3 million. But I think it just wasn't his day. It wasn't Chiefs' day against the Bills. They're not playing the Bills. They're playing the Panthers. Do I expect Mahomes, Kelsey, those running backs to bounce back against Panthers? I think we all do because Panthers are absolutely terrible.
And the Chiefs
So
are such a good team, even though they probably haven't been their best. They still find ways of winning, and
yeah,
I think that defeat will really kick them into gear now, don't you think?
I agree. And personally, I think Kelsey, on the form that he's had in the weeks coming up to the Bills game, should be in the talk about being towards those 18 million, like you have with Bowers and Kittle. And I think we're not going to, I think realistically, there's a good chance that Kelsey will have a good week this week and he goes back up towards those 18 points. So it is a week where you've got a good matchup for Kelsey and he's actually slightly cheaper. It feels like he's at a slight discount for me. It's like a Black Friday 10% discount or 20%
Yeah.
discount. So
I-
get your Black Friday deals while you can.
I'll be honest, Kelsey was the first tight end I thought of, when I looked,
Yeah.
and it's just I hate spending money on tight ends, don't I?
Yeah, I think I do as well. But the one thing is they have been returning quite a lot, those top three, whether
Yeah.
it's Kittle, Bowers, or Kelsey.
Hey,
Recently,
Dawson as well.
they have been paying off. Well, yeah, exactly in the Bucks as well. So
What do you
but could
think
that
about?
but would Otton go down now if Evans comes back? There's that question as well. But
I think this is probably the last elite week of K. Dotton.
I think potentially, yeah. I think there's a good
I think you'll
chance.
still see him probably be the main receiver, even if Evans is back.
Yeah, but I don't think he's a
But
16.9 million tight end. I think he could get down towards 10 to 12 probably. Um,
one tight end we never speak about in our fantasy, but he's very good. But there's never
okay.
normally much value. But they always seem to scheme players for him. Noah Gray, 9.1 million. Do you like that?
Yeah, I mean he could get involved as well. He gets involved quite a bit, doesn't he,
He gets
in that
involved every
offense?
week. It's just never a good volume, is it? It's just like 3 or 4 plays, comes on, does his job.
Well, he was the guy against the Bills instead of Kelsey, wasn't he?
Mhm.
It's quite often you see that he has a good week on those quiet Kelsey weeks, don't you?
Yeah.
Which is just how it is. And that
It,
18 points was a season high. It doesn't happen very often.
I think if
Um,
I was struggling, like say you get to your tight end and you've got 9.1 million left, I think I'd actually pull the trigger this week. Where before I probably would have looked at someone cheaper just because I didn't see him any
mm,
fantasy relevant.
yeah, I think
But
for me, I also look at it and think um, maybe I'd try and find another 0.2 million and potentially get Sanders um, as a bit of a differential against the KC tight ends because KC are pretty bad against tight ends as well. So if Ingram's not about, Sanders could be quite relevant.
yeah, I'll tell you one I did look at as well. Only because Jake Ferguson was meant to be out. Shoemaker, 6.2 million.
That's cheap.
And they're playing Washington. So even though it's Cooper Rush as centre, that could be a bit of a shootout, couldn't it? Because Washington put up points.
Yeah.
So it's not something I love, but as a cheap option, 6.2 is not bad as long as Jake Ferguson's out.
I mean, if he is out, I quite like that. He had 11 points last week, didn't he? 10 points against Saints. And in that Saints game, did he have a game where Ferguson was out earlier in the season? That could have been that one potentially. I can't remember,
He
but I
keeps
feel like
getting
he
banged
did.
up, doesn't he? I think he played a game and he went out within the first quarter.
Yeah, I feel like he did. So Schoonmaker at 6.2 million. If I think that's somebody who's going to be in a few of my lineups if I need to save money at tight end and if Ferguson is out, I think it's a no-brainer. And what's even better? He's got a cool name. DSTs. Where you going?
So DSTs, I've gone very Broncos, and I shouldn't be going them as the rival to my team, but I always go against the worst quarterbacks. So
Yeah.
you could have gone Chiefs as well, but I actually think Bryce Young has looked okay, and the Panthers' running game isn't bad either, is it?
Nope.
Chuba Hubbard has been pretty good. So I look at the Raiders' offense. We can't run the ball. We're still struggling to throw it. Looked a little bit better against the Dolphins, but I think that's more Dolphins defense not being great. I think Broncos is a top 5 to 10 defense.
Hmm.
I think they're elite, so I think I'm edging towards the Broncos. 7.5 million is quite cheap as well.
Extremely cheap, and yeah, I think it's an easy one to pick up at that price. You say they're schemed well, they've got a good matchup. So what more do you want in a defense? And compared to some of the other defenses, you're saving up to 3 million or 2.5 million on compared to the Vikings, or almost 2.5 million to the Lions. And I think you don't need to spend money like that again for DSTs. You really don't. It's such a minefield anyway. So if there's someone at 7 million who's got a good matchup and then also has a really good who actually is a decent defense and schemes well. So why would you not go and pick the Broncos? I tell you what I think is quite cheap is what are your thoughts on the Giants offense?
I don't think they're very good.
They're not, and then if you think they're going to be even worse with DeVito rather than picking DeVito as a bit of a gamble, how about the Bucks at 5.3 million? Cheapest DST on the slate. I don't think the Bucks have been a good DST defense in general this season, but they have had 2 double-digit scores, and then I don't think they're the worst defense on this slate, and I do not think they've got the worst matchup. So I think at 5.3, it leads to a very, very well-priced defense, and it's going to give you so much more money and savings towards other players across the pitch in your lineups. So for me, I think I will have them in some of my lineups just because of that price.
Yeah, I really like that matchup. To be honest, I think is Tommy DeVito the worst quarterback on the slate? Most likely. Can they run the
Yeah,
ball? Not really.
that's it. And I think between them and the Broncos, I think as the price stat, I think they're probably my favourite. I also don't hate. I don't even hate the Commanders at 6.1 million, fourth cheapest I think on the slate. Um, and I believe they're one of the better defenses in terms of form as well. So against the Dallas Cowboys, who can't run the ball, who's got Cooper Rush at quarterback, who's been pretty poor,
Yes.
I think they're well priced. I think there's really good options. I think again, what we're seeing here is there's very good options without having to spend money.
Like a lot of
So what's
Chiefs
the
as
point?
well.
Yeah,
Chiefs are in a 6 million range. You don't really expect Panthers to do a lot against them, do you?
no. So
So
yeah, 7 million there. Oh yeah. So again, they could do well as well, couldn't they?
yeah,
I could easily see some forced fumbles from the Chiefs returned for a touchdown.
yeah,
That's what I can see there. Maybe not as much interceptions, but I think I could see a fourth fumble for the Chiefs. But that's it. I think there's plenty of options. Other people will prefer the different options depending on what matchups they think are the better ones. But I think that what it is we're seeing week in, week out at the moment is you don't need to be spending 10 million on a defense.
I
You
agree.
just don't, because the pricing they have done on the defenses gives you some absolute bargains. So if you have liked all of those picks, make sure you tune in next week again for more help from us in hopefully winning some nice money in the lead up to Christmas. Of course, also, before we end it, a quick shout out to our podcast sponsors, the JTT Cup, who are the biggest and best ball league this side of the pond. And hopefully, I'm going to make the playoffs, but it's looking tight because I've got a few uh, nasty injuries, which in some of my particularly better players. So hopefully, I can change that back because Evans is coming back for me. And if you want to get involved in the 2025 JTT Cup, a best ball league, you can also do that. Link is in the description. And you can also donate now as well, which will help straight away for the JT, the Joshua Tarrant Trust. right to the lead up to Christmas. So happy days. You're making some people hopefully get a bit of a smile, or at least helping them make things easier at Christmas. Apart from that, see you next week, and hopefully we'll get some decent wins in week 12 DFS action. Ta-da.